All right, everyone. Well, with that, it is precisely 2 o'clock on the dot here on the East Coast. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you liked some of the music selection we had. We figured it was a little bit better than just kind of talking by the UV staff and some awkward silence. So hopefully you enjoyed that. You can listen to more of our songs from the Unique Venue Spotify playlist page, and you can hear and listen to playlists from all the staff members and give you another way to connect with us as individuals. But today we are here to listen to part 2 of Chuck Salem speak on the topic of customer service. For those of you who joined us for the first session, this is going to be a continuation. But if you weren't there for the first session, no worries. Chuck has a little bit of an overview at the start of today's session to kind of catch you up to speed. Just like usual, we do have a couple of ground rules before we pass things over to Chuck. First and foremost, all participants are going to be on mute during this session. There are 2 ways that you can engage with us, share your thoughts, question, and connect with the other attendees. The first is how most of you have been doing it so far, sending messages to the group, letting us know where you're joining us from today. Always fun to see that. Just a reminder that when you want your message to be seen by everyone, right next to the word to, there's a drop-down menu. Make sure that you have that selected as all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see the message that you're sharing. If you just have a message for the panelists, which will be me, Allison, and Chuck, you can just use the to all panelists selection. Additionally, there's a Q&A option in the Zoom menu that if you have a specific question that you'd like to ask Chuck during the session, you can pop it into there. Keep your eye on that session as an attendee because you can also go in and upvote all of the questions that you see too. That will help give us a priority if there's a ton of questions, but not a lot of time. Additionally, throughout the session, we will have 3 polls that pop up, one in a couple of minutes on venue status check, the one after that on attendee status check. The difference between that is the first one you're answering for your venue, the second one you're answering as an individual. And then finally, we have our session evaluation at the end. So we hope you can sit back and relax and again, thanks so much for joining us. Without further ado, I'm going to stop my share, pass it over to Chuck, and hear what he has to say. Chuck, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Corey. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Oh, you need to allow me to share.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Run a tight ship here. Okay, how about now?
I got it. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us again today. As Corey mentioned, there is a recording from the first session on the uniquevenues.com resources page. That address, and maybe you can put that up in the chat box there for everybody, is uniquevenues.com/chat or /resources. And so when you go there, you'll be able to see all of the webinars that we've provided so far since the pandemic began. But it might be good just to go back and listen to that after today's session, just to kind of catch up, especially if you were not able to attend the first one. So I like to think of this whole process of customer service. To me, it's like building a house or building a building. So you have to have a really strong foundation before you can start to put up framing, before you start to drywall, before you start to carpet and paint and move in. And to me, just a refresher, the very first thing we talked about in part 1 was your philosophy. Developing a philosophical statement about customer service, customer engagement, that is the very basis from which everything else in your customer service plan, how you and your team are hired, the types of initiatives that you're going to provide, and experiences, customer service experiences, how you'll survey and get feedback, and then how you'll re-engineer your process moving forward, all begins with a really strong philosophy. So we spent a good deal of time talking about mission, vision, core belief statements, and service promises. And all of that you'll hear in the first segment that's on the resources page. We also started talking about people. The people part is about hiring and training and evaluating the people who work within your venue or your organization, if you're a planner, that take care of your customers and interact with your customers. And I felt like we really rushed through that part in order to try to stay on time. So I'm going to begin there today. Because I think it's so critical. I probably will not go in as deep as I did the last time, but I feel like this is so critical to talk about because people are the ones who bring a good customer service program to life. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to move to that slide right now. So when it comes to people, the steps to building a really good, strong foundation for customer service has to do with, what are the functions of the people who work at every level within the organization? When you're hiring those people, how does customer service fit into the hiring practice? How is customer service trained in a consistent manner so that everyone who works within the organization, regardless of their level of interaction or their level in the hierarchy of the organization, are all trained in a consistent way? How do you manage people with customer service in mind? How do you coach your customer service representatives and your team to be good, effective service representatives of your organization? How do you recognize service for those who are showing exemplary service through your surveying methods, or who have you're receiving continual feedback from your clients about? And trapeze partners, those are your service provider partners. And how do you get them to come along for the customer service ride that you're on? So we're going to go ahead and break down each one of those a little bit here. I'm not sure how many of you do this right now, but it was really interesting. So I did some work for the University of Calgary in Ottawa, Ontario, right before COVID. And they have a really large organization. So their hospitality services and their service team under auxiliary services all are under one umbrella. So I was brought in to help to develop a great customer service philosophy and practice for the organization. And I asked everybody to bring job descriptions for every position that was under their umbrella. And we sat down during one of our sessions. It was more like a working session. And I asked them to get out a highlighter or their pen, and I wanted them to go through every single job description in their area and circle the job requirements as written, as published when they're hiring people, to circle or highlight every direct customer service behavior, expectation, or skill that was listed in the job descriptions. And I had already done this. I had collected all of their job descriptions. I did a sampling of about 30 or 40 of them that I looked at. And what I was finding was that there was very little to no mention of direct customer service expectations in the job requirements. So, to me, this is a very, very important function. If we're in the hospitality industry, our job is to serve. So if our job is to serve, because we are a service industry, then customer service expectations, skills, and initiatives should be ever present in every single job description. And my challenge to you to think about that is that if you don't have the expectation written that people will provide service in a particular way, that people will have service standards to achieve, that people will be held accountable somehow in their description, then it's difficult to evaluate that. So one of the activities I'd love to encourage all of you to do is just take out a sampling of some of the job descriptions in your area. Start with your own and take a look and see if there are any service expectations listed in your job description. Some examples might be maintaining a particular percentage of customer client satisfaction in the surveying process, or leading the team in achieving an overall quality assurance score of X% or above. I always like to share stories from my time when I worked at a hospitality venue. And for us, we maintained continual surveying for all of the groups that we serviced. So when a group was there for a conference, meeting, or event, we had surveys, we had various survey methods, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then we would gather up those surveys, and then our night staff would then aggregate all of the information and input all of the survey results. And we were always tracking. So the next day, the day after an event ended, we knew how our clients felt about the event in several different key areas, key performance areas. And then we were able to look at each individual event, and then we were able to keep an overall score. And this was really important to me as the director of conference services, because this allowed me to see how we were doing and who was doing a really great job and how our team was performing, and to also make sure we headed off any problems that were recurring themes through the surveys. But to me, job descriptions are that place where you have to lay out the expectation for how people will perform in their job from a customer service standpoint. Next, and I don't know why I have a hard time changing the slides, we went from taking those expectations that are listed in the job description, but also making sure, again, because we were in the service industry, just as you are, that we articulated the importance of service in our hiring practices. So some of the things that I really want you to focus on is making sure that there is language in your advertisements for positions, regardless of where it is that you're doing advertising to seek staff members, that service is an expectation, and achieving high quality of service is something that the candidates will be evaluated upon. Sometimes you can do some pre-interview testing. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but we did talk about this the last time, but there are different tests that, if you're permitted to be able to provide applicants with this test, or at least those that make the cut of those you're most interested in, that you can have them take the Enneagram test or the Clifton Strengths Finders to find out what that personality type or what those strengths are from skills, or how that person interacts with people. There are different Enneagram types that tend to rise to the top from a service standpoint, like the achiever, the helper, the peacemaker. There's some Clifton Strength Finders that do the same, relationship building and influence. But it's also a really interesting activity to do, because this helps you to place people into different practices and positions that are more closely aligned with who they are. As far as interview questions, it's very important in the hiring process to add, to make sure you understand key job function characteristics. And I talked about this before, but when you're a customer service rep, so you're a front desk worker, then what are the characteristics that that person has to have? They have to be able to be a multitasker, because they're going to be working on things, helping multiple customers. The phone might ring, somebody might approach the desk, they're doing a task as well. And how is it that they're going to perform in that job function? So key job characteristics: tenacity, because sometimes you have to be able to help people, get people to the place that they need to get to make some decisions. So maybe they're an event planner, and so tenacity and working with that planner. Like, I'm a nightmare person to work with from a planner perspective, because I never really make up my mind. I'm always changing, I'm always what ifing. So somebody who would be working with me to plan something, I'm constantly changing and shifting and thinking of new ways to do things, and calling my planner and saying, I was thinking, what if we did this? Can we do this? Is it too late to do this? So somebody who's tenacious and who can really, really work through that. So thinking about what the key job function characteristics will be in all of the different positions and building questions around those key job characteristics will help you really understand if a person is the best candidate or not. But you also need to ask intentional service questions as well, because again, there is truly no one in an organization that is free of any obligation to be anything short of an excellent service representatives. You know, when you look at, for instance, if you are hiring, and I'm going to take Disney, for instance, I always found this really intriguing. At Disney, the most frequently engaged service representatives are the people who clean the park. So most people think it's that person standing there who's standing on the corner all ready to ask the questions, but really it's that person who's sweeping up the popcorn on the street that somebody's always walking up and saying, can you tell me this? I have a question about this. How do I get to here? Those people have to be some of the most knowledgeable staff members and service-oriented staff members that there can be. And it's the same as far as your venues. Do you think about making sure that your service staff or your back of the house team or someone who's serving tables and catering or whatever are well versed in everything they need to know about events, event planning, resources within your venue so that they can go ahead and assist the clients? So wanting to make sure you're asking intentional service questions is important. This is just a sample of some of the questions that I had shared the last time. So I always like to hear about, I like to hear how people editorialize. So you ask a simple question like, tell me about problems with the product or services that you previously supported. So, well, I used to work at, you know, such and such event center. And so what I'm going to listen for is if somebody can give a critique that is professional about some of the problems at that event center that they might have worked with. You know, it was a wonderful event center. I think it had all of the you know, items needed and ingredients needed to make the perfect venue, but we just were always short-staffed. And one of the things that happened was we were short-staffed because we were always trying to work on the thinnest possible budget, which I think had a negative impact on how we could do things. To me, that's a responsible, you know, answer. It's very different than the person saying, well, I used to work at such and such event center, and, you know, my boss was just a cheapskate, and he was just always looking at ways to go bare bones and, you know, hit the bottom line. And we were on our knees working day and night, and we, you know, blah, blah, blah. So the way they frame their response tells me something about a person and how they're going to interact with our customers, right? The customer's pointing out an unknown flaw with a product or service. What do you do? I want to hear, are they going to take the time to learn as much as they can about what that problem is, and then make sure that they point that customer into the right direction, or say they're going to find out that answer? Or are they going to say, you know, I'm going to try to help them with everything I can, but if not, I'm just going to say, I can't help you with that. I don't know, whatever it might be. So, you know, I like this one too. As a customer, what are the 3 most important factors you value when it comes to selecting where you spend your money? That will tell you a little bit about consumerism and how they perceive consumer values, because people in customer service positions are the ones that have to try to perceive through their own intuitive behavior what's valuable to a client and try to meet them where they're at. So it's always interesting to me to hear those types of things. So, you know, these are just some sample questions. Of course, these will be in the recording that you're going to receive. But, you know, take this, start to, you know, recraft some of these questions, add to these questions so that you have a few that fit in. You don't have to ask all of these, but make sure you start to sprinkle in some questions that will help you to really understand the service perspective of the potential client. Next, So now you've got them hired. Now what happens? Training is what happens. And service training, this is what I've learned in my time in the hospitality industry. If there's a training day, everyone who works at that venue or at that association or in that company, whatever it may be, they all get trained on, in this case, service. So service training is April 15th, 2020. And on April 15th, 2020, everyone who works in an organization comes together and they are trained on service. The problem is, what happens with the 10 people who might be hired between April 16th and after? They didn't have that training, right? And because they didn't have that training, you've got then the other 50 people who are operating under a particular set of expectations for how service will happen at a particular time and place and within your organization or venue. But then you've got 10 people who, not by any fault of their own, aren't necessarily following that same pathway. So that starts to build inconsistency into the customer service experience. So for me, training is critical. And I believe that every single person who gets hired should be trained immediately on the customer service expectations. Regardless that, if they started on April 16th, there should be a training module that they're able to go through. It should be comprehensive. It should talk about relationship building. They should have like exactly the how-tos when it comes to service, just like everything else in their job description. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to develop a staff trainer. So finding one of those staff members who are an exemplary, passionate staff member when it comes to customer service. That person who is going to live and breathe, first understands and lives and breathes everything that they've been trained on when it comes to service, and have them be the trainer. So every time a new person is being onboarded for a staff position, this in-house trainer who lives and breathes great service is the trainer for all new staff onboarding. So something I would really encourage you to do so that you have a consistent program that everybody is learning in a pathway that everybody's following the same way. And then managing, making new staff a priority, making sure that they've got staff members that they can shadow and understand and speak with, and also making sure you're scheduling standard meetings as a manager with each and every staff member, and making sure when you're in those manager meetings, talking about service as one of the topics, not the topic, but one of the topics. You want to make sure you're asking them, talk to me about some of the, give me a great service success story that you've had recently. Anything exciting happening when you got to work with a customer and you got to, really kind of delight them, or, have they shared any kind of testimonials with you? What's going on? Have you had any service hiccups since the last time we met? Anything I can help you with? Are there any challenges you're running into when it comes with interacting with clients that maybe I can help coach you with, or we can pair you with someone? Or maybe you as the manager have reviewed some of the surveys and you're seeing some rather negative feedback and interactions with this particular staff member. So you want to positively interact with them to guide them back to a place of positivity when it comes to the service experience. Be an educator, provide guidance and accountability, never letting someone off the hook for poor service. The reality of it is we all have baggage we come to work with, right? The kids were acting up this morning. I overslept. Traffic was terrible. I have a pounding headache. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and here I am going to work. Whatever it may be, we all have that. But we also have the responsibility to coach and educate our team that those things have to be put aside as much as possible when it comes to servicing our clients, that they're not responsible for any of those things that happen. And you have to always approach the customer with a very positive purpose. So, and then developing reward and recognition programs, very important. So what are ways that you can surprise your entire team for customer service success? So, we do at Unique Venues, sometimes we do things that sound kind of small, but I think the team appreciates, it's the Friday before Labor Day, and we say to everybody in the team, you've all been working so hard, shut down your computers today at 3:00, leave early, go beat the traffic and go home with your families or whatever, or and friends, or go out and enjoy a little bit of the afternoon. But just, finding ways to say, congratulations, we just achieved this really high score from this group. It was awesome. Having pizza, having snacks or cakes, or just a message of thanks. Rewarding certain departments, especially because maybe you're getting your surveys back and you're noticing that the catering team is getting exemplary mentions and scores. You're doing really great everywhere else, but the catering department is knocking it out of the park. I think it's important to recognize that department as knocking it out of the park. I don't suggest doing that so that so it becomes a competitive environment. I don't think that's necessarily healthy. I think it is just because if somebody's really knocking it out of the park, some department is doing exemplary work, they deserve to be rewarded, and I think they deserve to be recognized in front of others. The same goes for individuals. If there's an individual who is really providing incredible service, to thank them and recognize them publicly means the world to them. Or maybe you have some simple program where you're giving out gift cards for mentions from clients. Maybe somebody's actually mentioned in a survey or whatever, or calling out, just sending an email out today to everybody saying, today I got a great email from such and such meeting planner from such and such organization, and I just want to recognize Corey because they said that working with Corey is such a delight, and that he has been on top of every single question they've asked. He gets back to them in a timely manner, and just great job for Corey. I remember we used to do a program that we actually stole from conference services at UCLA. But we used to, now this will show you how long it's been since I worked directly in a conference and events venue. So it was when kudos were really big snacks. Some people may not even know what a kudo is. I don't know if they even make them anymore, but they were like this chocolate covered granola bar fun thing. And we would give out, our staff, there was a box of kudo bars, and they weren't just to be grabbed and eaten when you wanted a kudo bar. But if a staff member ever saw or witnessed another staff member do something exemplary, not just something they should be doing, but really going above and beyond to help somebody, or really handled a tenuous situation quite well with a customer, then they would give them a kudos bar and say, kudos to you, that was great service. So just finding ways to really recognize exemplary service. We actually had a peer selected service representative of the month. So the peers in our conference and events venue would nominate one of their fellow peers. They couldn't nominate themselves, but they would nominate a fellow peer every month for being the outstanding service representative. But they actually had to cite a particular situation or situations that led to that nomination. And so we did have a peer selected outstanding service rep every month as well. Corey, any questions right now before we go on?
It's almost perfect timing that you ask. We've got a question. I'm just going to read the whole thing for you. I know sometimes we don't always necessarily have the right people on our teams, but I know that there is a tremendous lack of motivation to give the best guest experience, whether it's internal or external people coming into the office. How do you suggest that we turn this behavior around?
That's a good question, and that's a tough question because it's hard, especially when like if it's a newer employee, it's pretty easy. But if it's somebody that's been getting away with it, kind of, or hasn't been necessarily doing the service, doing the best service that they can possibly provide for a client, and it's been going on for a long time, it's just like trying to retrain a child or something to do something different because they've been getting away for it so long. But it's interesting because we went back, we talked a little bit about one of the ways that you can kind of pave the way for this is, we did the Enneagram and the Clifton Strength Finders at unique venues. And it was really, really interesting because there were self-epiphany moments. So I didn't even have to guide it. People would take these tests and look and say, oh my gosh, why am I even in sales? I'm like not the best person to be doing sales. Sometimes that lays the groundwork. So when you have some kind of information that comes basically directly from them, so doing this activity and then you're noticing some things, you can sit down one-on-one and go over some of their strengths, their professional strengths finders and things like that, and talk about how they translate to their job description. And that could open the door for you. But if it is definitely a problem, I feel that you have to be very direct, bring them in, because here's what happens. When you allow someone to serve someone poorly, it is possible that you could lose a customer. Because here's something we know. Customers talk about negative experiences far more than they talk about positive experiences. And they go into deep, deep detail about it. And so every time you allow a staff member to perpetuate average or not less than average service, you are opening the door for some lost business. So as difficult as it can be, I think you have to sit down with the person and say, this is a sense that I have, or if you're surveying people, this is the evidence that I have, and talk about how service is of the utmost importance to your success as an organization, as well as the expectations, and work with them to develop a service improvement plan. That's what I would do. My next slide has to do with the trapeze partners. Again, we talked about this the last time, but again, so when people do trapeze, I only know this because this is what I'm guessing, just so you know, I've never been a trapeze artist. But, two people climb up ladders at the same time, they walk to the plank at the same time, they dive off, they grab hands, and they do a beautiful artistic performance. That is what you do or people do every day in the hospitality events industry. The catering company and the room setup, they climb at the ladder at the same time, they walk to the plank and they grab hands and they do this beautiful performance so that the customer experience is great. Their room is set up beautifully, the food is served beautifully, everything's great. Everybody's doing this, but some of us are at the mercy of external caterers, external contractors, and service providers, whether they're external because they're outside completely of your organization, or external because they're in the same organization but outside of your scope of supervision. And it is really important to the overall experience for the client that every stakeholder and service provider who's part of the client experience is performing this beautiful performance together in the same way. So this is one of the most challenging things to do, but there are ways to do it and remaining positive through it. What I found to be successful was to develop memorandums of understanding with my trapeze partners, people at the same level as me, so director to director. And the way I always started out is saying, what do you expect from me and the people in my organization to make sure you facilities management, or you catering, or you technology, can make sure you really deliver for our clients? What can we do, and what's the best practices you want from us? And so I always started with me and my organization rather than saying, here's what I need from you. And I would even say, I kind of put this together. I put a list together of, I think, the things that you need from us and how you need them from us and what we need to promise to you we will deliver on, and use that as the starting. But then that gave me the right to say, so I was also thinking the same of what we need from you and how what we need from you can help us achieve a great customer experience. And here are some of those things. Did I miss anything? Did I put anything in there? What do you think of this? So I think being a partner with them and recognizing it's a two-way street, you both need to be able to understand each other's needs and make commitments to minimum expectations that could always happen or will always happen, or else you had the right to have to sit down and work through those. I think that's really important. Cross-training programs, we used to actually sit down with our service providers. So I never went in and said, you need to follow our customer service experience. If you don't follow our customer experience, things are going to be bad. Maybe that was what was the foundation of what I was thinking, but I didn't articulate it that way. I articulated it as an opportunity. I don't know if you have anything like this, but we have this great customer service program that we do. And if you ever feel like your team, we'd love to bring everybody together and do this service program. If you'd love to do it, that'd be awesome. We'll have some drinks and some beverages, but we'd love for everybody in your team, and we're going to invite this team and this team and this team too, to come together, and we'll all just be together for a training. We'd love for you to join us. That's not aggressive. That's not forceful. That's partner-like. And you're going to get a lot further with things like that. So, but when it comes to trapeze partners, sometimes you're going to fall into the net, but we want you to always aim for perfection. Corey, any questions?
Nope.
Okay. The next part's my favorite part about this whole service thing. And that's like, okay, so now we've got the foundation, and that's the mission and the vision and the expectations and the philosophy statement. Now we've taken care of the people part, so we've got some walls up. My favorite part of building anything is the decorative part, making it look like I want it to look. And so that's what this is all about. We're going to talk about delivering service and how important it is to deliver service in a way that is innovated by the people who are your first contact satisfaction team members. So when I worked in hospitality, our team, our staff were always the ones who innovated the service strategies. I didn't come to work, or I didn't stand in front and say, here are the things we're going to do to serve our clients. Or it wasn't like, okay, the management team has met and here are new service strategies that we're going to implement. Because, I had this kind of philosophy. If you can picture, when it came to service, I never really thought of a hierarchy or organization chart. I always thought of a wheel. And at any given time, the person directly interacting with the client was the most important person in our organization, and they were at the top of the wheel. And I might have been 4 layers removed, and I'm the least important person in the organization at that time. When it comes to service, these frontline people, those people sweeping up the popcorn on the sidewalks at Disney, those people standing on the corners, those people running cash registers, those people checking people in, those people cleaning rooms, those people serving food, those people setting up technology and doing sound checks, and all of those things. Those are the people who were best at innovating service ideas and practices that we would deliver across the team. because they were able to observe what some of the solutions clients might want or need without having to ask. I don't know if that makes sense, but they could sit back and they could say, here's an example. This is very 1990s. Sorry for my 1990s example. Imagine big bangs, as I tell you. So our venue was in a town that was filled with mountains everywhere, and everything was these narrow ways between mountainous areas. So there was no such thing as a grid of streets. So you couldn't have like first, second, third, fourth, fifth street, you know, crossing with A Street, B Street, C Street, whatever, because there was no way I don't think there was any street in that city that was straight, or that there was any street in that city that had something directly parallel or perpendicular to it, because nothing was a grid. Because of that, you never drove to a place and got back from that place the same way. You know, you were always there was some kind of difference in how you got back. Yeah, this is how you get there, but the best way to get back is this way. And we provided a concierge service at our front desk. So the people who worked at the front desk were often asked, hey, we have a free night tonight for dinner. Can you recommend some places to eat? Hey, we're going to we've got free time this afternoon. We want to do some shopping. Where's some great shopping? Hey, really want to go to this museum. Can you get me there? Whatever. Well, this was before people could go in and plug in the name of a place and it would give them directions. So this makes me sound really old, but it just hit me. But what we did was we would provide people with, here's a whole booklet of different restaurants you can go to, and they'd look and they'd see the menus. And then if they said, oh, we're really interested in this place, we said, we can make reservations for you. But also we had printed cards, and on the front of the card, it said how to get there. And on the back of the card, it says how to return, because we knew you don't just backtrack, right? So people loved that service. It was something that the staff said, we need to do this because people always come back and say, I got lost on my way back. I could not figure out how to get back to this place. So they thought about, wow, we need to do this. We not only need to give them directions on how to get there, but we need to tell them how to get back as well. So again, that's very old school, old fashioned, and an archaic example. But the gist of me telling you that was frontline staff observed a need, and they developed a solution to take care of that need and proactively delivered that service without the client having to ask for it, right? They just said, on this direction card, it tells you how to get there. Now you're going to notice when you're driving there, our streets are windy and hilly, and you never really know. And nobody in this town will ever tell you turn right on a named street. They'll say, go down about this much and just make a right-hand turn. They don't do that. So here, there are directions on the way back. This should get you back very easily. That's what you have to do. So here are some different steps that I want you to consider when it comes to delivering service. One is, define current initiatives by area. So who is going to, front desk staff, what are some things that you think we should implement that will help to provide great service? And come up with some different concepts. And as a group, from a consensus standpoint, present to the whole staff some of your ideas. We're going to sit down and you're going to tell us all of your ideas, and we'll come to consensus as a team of some of the best things to do. Really, really work out the pros and cons. How difficult will it be to provide the service? And is it a service that we can measure? Will we be able to measure it formally, informally? How are we going to do that? And then make your list of all of the different initiatives that you're going to put together throughout your entire organization to make the customer experience the best that it can be. Make sure that as part of your service training, each and every one of those initiatives are trained on, because maybe I'm not that front desk worker who's going to need to give those directions out, but there might be that 5% chance that I'm going to be back there. So I should at least understand what's going on so that I can help somebody with that. Make sure that you are looking at the results. I mean, we did some, customer service initiatives don't have to be costly. They don't have to be in depth. So, like, we did some of the simplest things that would have people say statements like this. And this is what you want to have people say. So we worked with a state agency, the Department of Natural Resources, and they were really hesitant to use our venue because they were used to using big hotel chains, ballrooms and big hotel chains. And they actually considered it, they actually articulated to us that they were taking the risk to book with us. Now those are strong words. Somebody says, well, we'll try it one time and see how it goes. Well, by the time we were done with them, all 14 of their events that they held each year were held at our venue. And they made statements like, the Hiltons and the Hyatts have a lot to learn from your venue about how to take care of their customers. See, we did simple things like this. Little bit of the psychology of service. And I don't say these things to be like manipulative, but think about it this way. If any of you are parents, as a parent who's a consumer, anytime a business takes good care of my child, they win me over. It's like, I'd rather go to the bank that gives my dog a dog treat than one that doesn't. Like doing those nice little things, right? So when you feel like people take care of someone or something that you love, that starts to build up some loyalty. So one of the things we did was, whenever we had dinner where there would be children attending the dinner, we always knew how many children, because we asked that, how many children dinners, because we had a different price point. And it was so low cost and so low risk to have, say the number was 10 Happy Meals in the warmer. And if we saw that a child wasn't happy with their meal, our servers would check in to make sure that it was going well. And if they noticed, that very discreetly talk to the parent and say, if you think your child would like it, we have some Happy Meals. So if you'd like, I can bring out a Happy Meal. Do you want a burger or do you want a chicken nugget one or whatever it is? And they'd be like, you're kidding me. You have that? Oh, I'd love that. That would make them so happy right now. Thank you. Those are those little things. So $30 we spent. I knew my team would eat those Happy Meals if they were left over, right? Who's going to pass up a Happy Meal? So those are the small things. We had a team of education students put together an activity book for all children who checked in for an overnight group called Conference Center Kids. And there were all kinds of activities. And I can tell you from a service standpoint, we did that same thing this year at Unique Venues, and people loved it. Because thank you so much for this. So putting together service initiatives that will take care of something like that really goes a long way. So there's all kinds of things you can do. So I really challenge you to put together some teams and challenge people to come up. First things first, say, okay, the first thing I want you to do is come up with 3 service initiatives we can enact in each one of our areas that cost no money. They're all behavior-based. They're all simply behavior-based about how we respond and how we act and how we look and how we talk and how we speak. And then come up with 3 really kind of low-cost initiatives that we can enact that also will make a difference, and see, and then come to consensus. Okay. Corey, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Now, Unique Venues offers a ton of consulting. We've worked with about 250 venues in the past 10 years. And when we do that, we really take a look under the hood. We take a check under the hood, and we really make sure that the engine's running well and everything's going good. And one of the greatest areas of improvement that we find is needed is evaluation. You know, we always tell people, before we come on site, could you just give us a summary of all of your surveys from last year? So give us a sample of the survey tool you use, and give us the findings. And, you know, one time out of 100, maybe we've actually received survey results, because people say, we don't really do surveying. How do you get people to respond? We just don't do it. We don't take the time to do that. And I feel like that's not surveying clients is leaving money on the table, because again, we know that people share negative information much more than they share positive information. We know that meeting and event planners' number one resource for information is each other. So they talk a lot, share information. In a world of social media where everybody could talk about everything that went wrong in a split second and share it with the world, all of these things are critical. Most important to me, and how I use survey information, is when we receive survey information, we learn about the products and services we provide. We learn what's not working on a regular basis. Wow, we're getting a lot of information that this isn't working. Let's take that service off the table. We're wasting resources, and this is not a service that people appreciate, want, or need. Wow, people love the service, but they're telling us a couple things that really we can improve, and we can improve upon. Or this service is excellent, and we want to make sure we build upon it. So evaluations tell you a lot. It helps you know what's successful. It helps you measure that success. You can share results or articulate those results with everyone who works. You know, I was never that person that if technology was, if there was a really positive feedback about the technology team, they knew it. If there was really negative feedback about the technology team, they knew it. So information is power, and it gives you something to make decisions upon, right? So that goes back to that question about evaluating. You know, if you had the person who asked that question about how do you sit down with someone, you know, if you had information that is factual and not gut instinct, you're able to go and make your case much better. I think I shared this, I don't know, I've done this presentation before, so I don't know if it was you I shared it with or another group I shared it with, but when we opened our new venue, it was a 400-bed venue with tons of meeting and event space. And it was on a campus. And so they were all single rooms, single beds. And we bought these mattresses that we thought would be great because of sanitary reasons. And we completely didn't take into consideration the comfort factor. And so we were getting evaluation group after group after group talking about that the beds, while they were comfortable, they were really loud because they had like a plastic covering on the mattresses. So when you moved, you can hear it. So we actually ended up donating all of those mattresses to a homeless group of shelters in the Philadelphia area, and bought all new mattresses, because that's important. If people aren't sleeping and having a good night's sleep, then people aren't going to want to come back there. right? So that's really important. So that's kind of how you can, an example of how we were able to use this information. So we saw it after one group and like, wow, okay. And then we saw it after the second group and like, okay. And then we started to really see it. And we thought, well, we're not going to wait 5 or 6 months to make this change, because how many customers will we misserve without making this? It's worth the investment to do this. So some other things about evaluations. Always have a good survey template that you use. Always brand and style your survey so that people know exactly who is sending them a survey. Do some A/B test servings with subject lines. So A/B testing means send one group of people a survey with maybe the subject line is, give us your feedback. And the other cohort that you send it out, it might say, we value your input, whatever. Try different subject lines to see if you get higher results and returns in those surveys. Use personalization variables. So what that means is that if you can avoid sending a generic survey, send one to me that says, hi, Chuck, thanks for attending and then the name of the conference on these dates. So it shows that we actually know who we're surveying and why we're surveying them, as opposed to just saying, please complete this survey for us. Customize any open-ended questions. So if you can make any kinds of modifications to questions that would be specific to that group, that is always a valuable thing to do. Translate the survey. So maybe you're working with a group and that group is from Canada. You've hosted a group of folks from Canada. Well, as a country that is bilingual, both English and French, to be able to give people the option to complete that survey in either English or French is helpful. The same here in the United States, as we become more bilingual as a nation, as both in English and many people speaking Spanish, the opportunity to do that as well. Improve the mobile survey template. So make sure, so if you have a survey tool that could be viewed on a website, make sure that it is also very sensibly and organizationally easy to use on a tablet or a phone. So you want to make sure that it is able to transition to that type of tool. Don't add extra questions. Don't ask a ton of questions. Just try to keep it five or six questions. Keep it short that people will want to actually complete. Send it from a real person. So don't send it from survey@uniquevenues.com. Send it from chuck@uniquevenues.com. And I'm going to be honest with you, and Corey and Allison will laugh at this. This is the bane of my existence. We notice every time we send a survey or something out from Unique Venues, I don't know, Allison or Corey might jump in, but we get 5 times the results, 10 times the results. Is it more than that? If it's sent from chuck@uniquevenues.com, it's really kind of an interesting thing that people say, we did not get a lot of results, and then we'll try to send it out from my name and people will respond to it because I think everybody recognizes me. They might not know Corey and they're saying, so who's Corey? I don't know who Corey Unique Venues. And these days, sometimes people are like, I don't even know if this is real. So whenever possible, try to send from a real person. This next one, because it's from Retently and I like it, I don't like this one. They say consider the Anita effect. The Anita effect is sexist to me. So if you want to follow the Anita effect, you can, but I say don't do it, because what they're basically saying is, this is just a terrible thing to say, but studies do show that if you send a survey out to a predominantly male clientele, that you should use a female to send it out and vice versa. I don't like that. I don't like that, but this is research-based, but I say skip that one.
Can I just cut in for a moment?
Yeah.
I know that we're kind of coming close to the hour. There is a question. I just want to make sure we can address it before this.
Okay, yeah, because we're almost done here. Go ahead.
How often should venues and teams review their evaluation form and revise it?
So the way that we would do it is that, there's no real answer to how often you should revise it. You should revise it as the chemistry of who you are as a product changes. So as you evolve as a product, your survey should evolve. As customer needs change and what becomes important to a customer changes, you should change it. So I'd say minimally every year, because what you want to do is, if you do any kind of annual report, to have as much consistent information as possible. I would want to keep it that way for the year. So I'd look annually at whether or not you want to make any changes or enhancements and try to stick to that same survey for consistency purposes for the year. And then how often you should review the results should be, you should survey after every group whenever possible, at least minimally the planner or the organizer or the person you worked with. Most importantly, because I think it's important to survey the planner or the organizer of the event, and then on site whenever possible, survey the participants in key areas. So, send from a dedicated IP address. That helps to legitimize who you are. That set up SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. I'm just going to say, cut and paste that and hand it to your tech people and say, we just want to make sure we do this. Because I can't even explain it. The only thing I can explain is those three things, those three sets of letters, are things that are done from a technology standpoint when you send something out to help to make sure that it gets through the recipient's spam filter more easily. Okay, so those are things that your tech people should understand, your marketing people should understand, and so people like me say, make sure this SPF, DKIM, DMARC, ABC, EFG, HIJK, LMNOP works, kind of thing. Clean the email list on a regular basis. If you email someone and it bounces back, you should do something with that bounce back email. Like if you get an email that says, I'm no longer at such and such and such, don't just zip through it, take it, find out who's replaced them, update the record, call that person and see, or ask, do you know where they're at? We just noticed Allison's no longer at the center for such and such and such. And, we would love to just reach out to her and thank her. And can you tell me how I could reach her? Or Google them, but update them. If you do it on a regular basis, you're going to be able to keep your records really clean and healthy. Segment the respondents. So we've already talked about the planners, attendees, and if there's different types of attendees and you ask that demographically, separate that. Pre-notify the respondents to let them know. Please watch, you'll be getting a survey from us, and if there's some kind of incentive to complete them, let them know what the survey is. Make sure you watch for this survey. It will arrive on Thursday around noon in your inbox, and we'd appreciate if you take 5 minutes. That will help to increase your response rate. Focus groups are a great way to get feedback. So that's bringing targeted groups of people in to sit around a table and be asked very targeted, specific questions about the things you want to learn more about. So maybe those things are about your check-in and check-out processes, some operational issues like room servicing or meeting and event space setups, whatever they may be, or maybe it's about the customer experience, whatever it is. But making the list of things that you want to know more about, and then finding a third-party professional to lead the focus group experience. People are much more open when somebody that they feel they can be completely open with asks the questions. And then have them, send to people, here are the list. My name's Chuck Salem. I'm going to be the facilitator for your focus group. And this is a list of questions we're going to review in our customer service focus group to learn more about how you perceive this venue. And then when they get there, they lead that. And when they're done, that third party thanks them for attending and says that they will be putting together a report. And then they can copy all of these respondents as in kind of an executive high level saying, thank you so much for your participation. The following suggestions, ideas, areas of improvement are being articulated to the organization, who will then work to improve those things. So it's just nice to keep the people who did the focus group in the loop. And I know we went a little bit over, but only 5 minutes. And so that's not so bad for me. My service experience to you could be improved by being more on time with my structure. So any questions, Corey, before we...
You kind of touched on this. You had mentioned that it's smart to segment the evaluations to the planner and to the attendees. Is there any added information that you want to share with that? Maybe ask different questions, or are you really just looking for how the responses are segmented? What would you share about that?
So when you're setting up your survey, what's most important is to ask yourself, what is important for us to know to make sure that our business is embraced, liked, wanted by the people we serve, and we'll keep them coming back as loyal customers. So you ask yourself those questions. And who's our audience? Who are the people that we're going to be serving? You know, I am really in favor of say it's a youth-based organization. A lot of people don't ask kids questions, and I love asking youth questions because you know what? They don't hold back. They'll tell you exactly what they want and exactly what they need, and it's going to improve the experience for those kids. If it's an organization or a group that is represented both by adults and children, you can ask questions. If it's something that's maybe it's a faith-based, and so there are leaders of the faith that are asked and there are attendees or whatever. So it's just asking, but most important to me, the person who is organizing the event to me is job one. You want to know each and every person you're working with. And here's the reason why. Because even if you don't have the bandwidth to ask the questions of the attendees, most likely that person leading that organization and planning that event for the organization does have that mechanism and will have feedback from that group that you can ask questions about and at least learn from them. Because what's important to those planners is that the attendees perceive the experience. You know, how they perceive the experience is every bit as important. No, let me say, how they perceive the experience on behalf of their attendees is as important as the actual survey results you receive from the attendees, right? Because perception is reality. So your attendees can tell you it was a great experience, but if your planner didn't perceive it that way, you have to work really hard to say, well, we have this from the client who says that, but then you're getting into more of a contentious relationship. So you want to make sure that that planner themselves perceives on behalf of their attendees that there was a good experience.
Fantastic. And with that, I think that covers all of the questions. So thanks everyone so much for joining us today. Thanks, Chuck, for sharing your expertise. As always, yeah, customer service is such an important part, especially now when people might remember relationships and interactions more than, you know, or wanting to remember that more than being told that they can or can't do something. So it's super important now than ever. On the screen for you all is a highlight of the sessions that we have coming up. Tomorrow on Facebook Live, you'll hear from our Director of Research, Education, and Consulting on his Data Bites series, talking about some data that we're collecting at unique venues and how it might impact you and your venue and your events. For our event planners, we have a roundtable on Thursday, for you to call in and kind of talk with some experts here at Unique Venues and your peers in the industry. Next week, specifically for US venues, we have a group therapy on Monday. And then for our Canadian venues, We have a group therapy on Wednesday. I think I'm getting my dates mixed up. The dates are on there. I don't know what day of the week it is. Sorry. But then sandwiched in between them, we have our industry expert panel, which Chuck will lead again, so you'll hear from him. And then we're scheduling more for September, which we'll obviously be able to share at that time. So thanks everyone so much for joining us today. We'll send you all of the post-session resources and recordings soon. And we hope to see you on another event. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye all.